Today is March 9th, 2019. My name is Juliana Geyer, and I'm interviewing my grandfather, Jack, at his house for my first year seminar class at Marshall University. Our FYS class has been focusing on the themes of critical thinking, the power and value of asking well-crafted questions, and storytelling, and the stories we tell in response to those well-crafted questions. Frank Sesno's book, Ask More, has served as inspiration for this interview. This interview will be focused on the theme of legacy. Papa, thank you for agreeing to be interviewed.
No, it's my privilege, Juliana.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, that's going to be a little bit difficult because my life is pretty complicated, at least by some standards. I've been in law enforcement 40 years full-time as a city police officer and campus chief. Along with that, I've been serving as a police chaplain for almost 40 years. Unfortunately, performing line-of-duty death ceremonies and memorial services and things of that nature. And I retired in 2012 after 40 years full-time and still remain in a part-time capacity as an interim chief and as an on-call chaplain for multiple agencies. And recently I wrote articles for the FBI on officer wellness and also for the International Conference of Police Chaplains. So I still have my fingers in the law enforcement pie, so to speak. I am the president of the National Association of Chiefs of Police, the American Police Hall of Fame, and our facility is in Titusville, Florida, and it's the oldest and the first police museum and memorial in the nation. And we are getting ready to erect a 10-story tall eternal flame with a 100-foot flame honoring fallen police officers. Currently, we have an indoor wall very similar to the Vietnam Memorial Wall, and it's tons of white Italian marble with all the officers' names inscribed, K-9 Memorial, a 9/11 memorial, and so I'm very actively involved with that. And also as a drummer, I've been a musician most of my life. I started playing drums when I was about 4, and I'll be 70 in a few months, so I've been playing quite a long time, so I love music. And so I guess to summarize me, I guess I'm a cop, musician, and a preacher wrapped into one.
So our first year seminar class is focused around critical thinking. What is an example of critical thinking in your line of work or in your life?
Well, I think any facet of police work involves critical thinking because you have to make split-second decisions, especially as it pertains to use of force and deadly force, and you don't have much time to debate or negotiate or figure things out, and I've come very close to losing my life in the line of duty a few times, and thankfully I hesitated where I would have been justified in maybe using deadly force, but I hesitated. And so that's an area of critical thinking that not a lot of people have to engage in. Sometimes we can involve ourselves in critical thinking and go back and rearrange things or decide to do things differently, but in a life and death scenario you don't have that privilege. So it's critical that your decisions are right and prompt. It's one of the only professions other than a military person in combat who literally is authorized to take a human life justifiably and also required to give their own life if necessary. And so few people have ever had to involve themselves in that type of situation. So it's very sobering to think about. And when I look back over the years in my career, how easily I could have taken a life or how easily my life could have been taken. So law enforcement as a whole involves critical thinking.
What means the most to you right now?
Well, what means the most to me, my wife just had a surgical procedure for her heart, and so at our age, what means the most to me right now is life. Sometimes when we're young, it seems like only yesterday I was 18 and my wife was 17, we got married, and I went into the Marine Corps my first tour during the Vietnam War. And when you're that young, you just think the whole life is ahead of you, and you don't think about mortality and all of the things associated with that. But right now, life, I take each day, I value it, and being a police officer and a Marine in combat, I realize the value of life and how easily it can be taken away. And so the most important thing to me right now is taking every day, making the most of it, because every day is valuable. It's a gift, and what we do with that gift will determine how we spend eternity, I think.
Who or what has made the biggest impact in your life?
Well, there's divine and also the human component. My mother, I'd have to say, raised 5 sons pretty much on our own. Unfortunately, I come from a broken home, and I never really had a father figure. So my mother was one of the deciding factors I think, in my outcome in life, how things unfolded. She ended up raising all of her sons, and they all became firemen, policemen, and paramedics. So she was a strict disciplinarian. And then, of course, my wife of 50 years. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. And then, of course, God. I believe that we consist of a triangular existence. There's the physical, our bodies, and then there's the emotional, or our emotions and our mind and our feelings, and then there's the spiritual, which is the God component. And I think my mother, my wife, and my God have been probably the most influential characters in my life, and continue. Of course, my mother's gone now, but so those three people, I think, are the most significant. Now, there's a lot of people that have influenced my life, a lot of wonderful people have been mentors to me, and wonderful people, but those three are the key.
What is one of the biggest life lessons you've learned, and how have you learned it?
Oh, the biggest life lesson. Now, this is going to sound a bit paradoxical, but my biggest life lessons have come from my mistakes. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I've learned more from my mistakes than I have from my successes. It's very humbling when you make big blunders, even little blunders, and sometimes we have to have an element of humility and admit that I was wrong and say I'm sorry. But my mistakes have taught me more, I guess, than my successes. And I know some people will frown at that maybe, but when I look back, I think your failures mold you as well as your successes, because it teaches you humility, and it teaches you to strive to be better. That's why athletes do what they do. They fail and succeed, yet they keep striving for perfection. And so I think our mistakes and our failures in life cause us to strive for perfection, or they should, at least. Instead of making us bitter, they should make us better.
If you could go back in time and give the younger you some advice, what would it be?
Oh my. I just read a passage of scripture in Proverbs by the wise Solomon, who was the wisest man on the earth other than the Lord. And it's ironic that you asked me that question, because I just read it moments ago before you came. And he says, young people, enjoy your life. Enjoy those good things that you have, because it will go by very quickly. In retrospect, I sit here looking back and I think about, it seems like only yesterday I was in high school and college, and it goes by in the blink of an eye. So my suggestion to young people is enjoy life, and don't let the little things get you down, because when you look back in time, you realize that they weren't that significant in reality. I know when they happen, those things that seemingly are earth-shattering, in reality are really not all that big.
Yeah.
And there again, those things help mold your character and help you to be a better person. So, enjoy life. Be thankful for your health, because, I see the tragedy as a police officer in particular with drugs and alcohol, what it's done to human life and families. And please, I would admonish anyone that would see this or hear this, steer away from those things that can harm you physically as well as emotionally and mentally. But drugs and alcohol have been a real, terrible thing that is, you have your health. It's one of the few things that you may or may not be able to get back. And so you need to safeguard it. And don't put those things in your body that's going to mess you up, alcohol and tobacco and drugs. And it's, a lot of people, they swallow a camel and gag at a gnat. I tell people they get mad at me. I have relatives that say, oh, you shouldn't eat that much salt. And then they smoke 4 packs of cigarettes in a day, So I'd say just eat healthy, exercise, and have faith in God. I mean, realize that, your life is valuable and it's important. And seek your purpose and your goal in life. It may not be what you think early on. Everybody has a specific calling and a purpose in life. And if we really desire to seek that and do that, I think God will help us find that. And then, lastly, make sure you have plenty of life insurance. So if you do kick the bucket, your spouse or your better half has the advantage of it. And be careful not to get yourself in debt. Be wise with your money. That's critical. If you learn those things early on in life, it's going to make a huge difference as you grow older.
What are some of your favorite things to do and why?
Well, my favorite things are my drums over here, and you can't see them on the video, but I have an entire room full of drums. I'd rather play drums than eat when I'm hungry. And as I said, I've been playing since I was 4 years old. Of course, I play in our church now, but at one time I was the youngest licensed musician in the state of West Virginia, playing in nightclubs when I was 11 and 12 years old. And so I played doo-wop, rock, country, gospel, big band, you name it, jazz. I love jazz. And so that's what I love to do. And I like to read my Bible because I think that's fruitful, beneficial, and it teaches me how to be a good citizen and a good husband and a good father and grandfather and a good, person in society. And I love to eat. I mean, I think that's a characteristic that a lot of us have in our family. The Bible says He satisfies our mouth with good things. And so my wife will tell you this. She doesn't know anybody that enjoys good food more than me. I mean, I just really delight in quality things. And that's not being a glutton or, but just I enjoy eating. I like traveling. I like new foods. I like to experiment with new things. Now, some things that are creepy crawly, I stay away from. And as a Marine, when I was in combat, I've been in some countries also as a police chaplain. I've been in many countries. And some of the things that was put before me, I was a little reluctant to eat. So I'm adventurous and I experiment, but there's a limit to that. So.
What are some things that you want your great-grandkids to know about you, and what is some advice you'd want to share with them?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Because there's quite a few things I'd like my grandkids to know. I guess if I could narrow it down, I'd want them to know that it's been my faith in God that sustained me all of these years. And nothing surpasses family. We get along, siblings, we clash and we ruffle each other's feathers and kids get mad at mom and dad and, you're mean to me and whatever, but there's nothing really more important than family. And God established the family, and are we perfect? No, I don't know of any perfect families anywhere. I haven't seen one yet. But, it's the best we have, and we need to value it because there'll come a time in life when all of those people that one time annoyed you, you wish they were in your presence. And I know that because I've recently buried my oldest brother and my mother and almost my wife. She could have had a very serious outcome with her heart situation and relatives, and I've got another brother that's very critically ill. So when you get to that point and you look back, as a policeman, I've gone on a lot of calls where people have been killed either from accidents or shootings or overdoses. And this has instilled something in me. I see them agonizing. If only I would have told them I loved them. If only I would have said goodbye. If only I wouldn't have said that mean thing that I said. And it's too late. And so, family. That's what I would try my grandchildren to remember. Family's important. Have faith in God. And concerning me, I'm a bit of a... I tell people that my wife tells me I'm an 8-year-old boy. The Bible says you must become like little children to inherit the kingdom of God. And it doesn't mean you become foolish or ridiculous or childish. It means you become childlike in spirit. If you take things too seriously in life, it'll wear you down. And I found out, I think it's kind of an odd thing. You begin life as a child, and in some ways you end life as a child. You kind of revert back to your child in a way. Simple things, you delight. That's why children delight in animals, and kittens and dogs and puppies and simple things, And so I would encourage my children to family, faith in God, and to remember me that I'm childlike in spirit. I know some people think I'm crazy, but that's okay. I'd rather be crazy and happy than to be stern and serious and never have any fun in life. So there's a balance there. So enjoy life. And humor, that's an important component in your life. Always try to find something humorous or positive, even in the midst of all the negative things you encounter.
What is your favorite part about being a grandparent?
Oh, 6 granddaughters. You know, it's kind of ironic. When I was going into the Marines in 1968 during the Vietnam War, I wrote my wife a letter, and somewhat prophetic in nature, I think, which, I don't claim to be a prophet, but I wrote a letter. I said, if I survive this, and there was not a lot of guarantee during Vietnam, Marines, they had a high mortality rate, or a lot of Marines didn't come back alive, or they came back wounded or whatever, and so, there was a reality that I may or may not make it back. But I wrote a letter, and we found it many years later, 20, 30 years later after the fact. And I wrote in that letter, if I survive and come home during this war, that I hope someday God gives us 3 daughters. Well, ironically, as you know, we have 3 daughters and 6 granddaughters. So I think God just gave me a double blessing, a triple blessing, if you will. So I have 3, 3, and 3. I have a whole basketball team of girls. So it was kind of a desire in my heart, and even at 18 years of age, I guess there was something about it that was innate, that maybe I had a heart for girls, I don't know. But so I'm thankful for my granddaughters and my daughters. So it's one of the greatest blessings in my life, and that's my heritage, that's my legacy. That's what we're talking about, legacy.
Yeah.
So you are my legacy. It's not just me.
Yeah.
What I have, my family, what I've accomplished is my legacy. But the biggest legacy I have is my children and my grandchildren.
If there was a book or movie made about your life, what would the title be?
Gomer Pyle. It's funny. Maybe Forrest Gump, the second. My daughters often laugh and call me Forrest Gump because
you Forrest Gump.
because I'm always in these unique situations I've been with presidents, vice presidents, congressmen, senators, ambassadors, some of the most rich and famous people in the world. Of course, as an executive protection specialist, which is something I do now for a regional security firm. And in my law enforcement career, I've been with many famous people: President Obama, George Bush, Vice President Cheney, Dolly Parton, Betty White. I mean, you can look on my wall, you see all these pictures of famous people that I've had the privilege to be with. I didn't orchestrate that. It's just the way it worked out. And so as a result of that, my daughters kind of say I'm kind of like Forrest Gump. I always end up with some unusual situations. But, I believe that's God's providence in my life. He has me. See, when I was a police officer, I had one prayer when I went out on patrol every night. Very simple prayer, wasn't very eloquent, very fancy, but it was sincere. And I would pray, Lord, help me to be at the right place, at the right time, saying and doing the right things for the right people. And one day that might be with a wino, it might be with a suicidal person, and the next day it might be with the President of the United States. And so he answered that prayer many, many, many times. So I guess if I had a book, they would call me Forrest Gump #2.
How would you want that story to unfold?
Well, how would I want to unfold? Probably from my childhood. Because, if you look back, if you've seen the movie Forrest Gump, and I think you have, he had a very difficult childhood. His mom raised him. I had a very similar situation. I was the runt of the family. Out of all of my brothers, I was the smallest one. They used to make me fight big guys because they were big and they could handle them. I remember one of my brothers, when I was a youngster growing up in Chicago after we left West Virginia, this big bully was picking on me on the street. And I ran home. And my brother said, I'm going to put you outside the door, and unless you whip that bully, I'm not letting you back in. I think about 5 or 6 times he shoved me out the door. And I had a pretty rough go, but I think I finally whipped the guy, So my life is very similar to Forrest Gump's in a way. And I don't claim to be a overly intelligent, smart guy. I don't have a PhD. I have a college degree, but I don't have a lot of doctorates. But I think my expertise and my skill has come through hardships and difficulty, and I've learned to appreciate life and not to be judgmental of other people. Because when you look at a person, sometimes they have a scoff or a frown or a mean look on their face. You just don't know what that person's been through. So I try to be compassionate. Now, I can be tough when I need to be. As a street cop, I learned there's a balance. Sometimes you do or die. Same thing as a Marine. There's a balance between compassion. I think it's a paradox. you can be a warrior and a compassionate person at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that kind of depicts Forrest Gump. He was kind of just a simple guy, yet because of his simplicity and his humility, it affected lives. And that's the way I want to be.
So our final question is, would you like to add anything that I haven't asked?
Well, there's a lot of things I could add. I don't think I've even touched the surface or skimmed the surface of the things that I've experienced or feel. And I don't know what life holds. Like I said, Bible says your life typically is 70, which is 70. I like to think I'd live to be 100. But if I don't, if I die tomorrow, I'd be content. Have I made many mistakes? Yes. Have I failed and bumped my noses? Yes. But I'm also thankful for the successes and the privileges and the experiences that I've had. So, it's like Forrest was telling Lieutenant Dan when he was questioning him about going to heaven. He said, "Well, I'm going to heaven, Lieutenant Dan." Well, that's the kind of way I feel. Not because I'm worthy of done anything worthy of that, but because of God's mercy and because of the Lord, the provision He's made. I'm looking forward to heaven. This life is so short.
Mm-hmm.
It goes by so quickly. And I guess if there's anything I can emphasize in this interview, value life. Take time to smell the roses and enjoy the blessings that you have and try to be a blessing to others. That's the only thing I could add.
Thank you, Papa.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you, honey. I love you.
Love you.